Welcome back to the Victim or Villain podcast. Today I'm super excited because I have somebody here who is not only a City Hall legend, but he is someone that knows the city inside and out. And we're going to get into a couple of different things today, such as the current mayor's race, his time in city government, and more. So thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Rich
Happy to be here.
Guidice,
Happy
the
to
Rich
be
Guidice, for being here.
You're too kind.
I appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
How's life been?
Life has been good. It is an interesting transition coming from government, and that's really all I ever knew for almost 34 years, and transitioning out after working for the city and trying to get your footing on what life looks like after that has been a little bit interesting. And to be completely honest with you, and your thousands of people out there watching, it's been a little challenging just trying to navigate that. I think when it's something that you grow up thinking that this is what you're going to be a part of, and then when it ends, I think it's important for people to have a plan after city government and just where you want to be and where you want to go.
Do you miss city government?
I do. I miss the people most first and foremost. I miss being involved in a lot of the things that I was involved with over 34 years, especially the last 28 years. I met a lot of very interesting people and was able to have a lot of really good relationships.
I know, it was always so funny because whenever we would sometimes see each other and we would walk into City Hall together, it would always be like you'd be a celebrity. Everybody would come up and talk to you and say hi to you. And I think that goes to show like how respected you were in city government. And that's really through my short stint in city government, that's what I really realized. It's like people don't care about the knowledge that you possess necessarily. It's more so of the relationships that you have. Everything is based on relationships there. And so if you don't have good relationships with people, then you're not able to get stuff moving the way that I think most people don't understand, that just because you're smart doesn't mean anything in city government. It's all about relationships, and you always had such great relationships with people.
So I learned that early on, and I learned it on from a variety of people. First and foremost, probably my father and my family. My dad was involved in politics and really kind of indirectly got me involved early on, stuff in mailboxes with pamphlets and stuff like that in the neighborhood. But he was always very personable himself, and I watched the way that he interacted with people, and I watched the way he did in the neighborhood. And then when I was able to get into city government, there were some really good people that I was surrounded by that really kind of taught me when to be quiet, when not to say anything, before I was allowed to come into the room. But there were some really good people that I was surrounded with throughout my career.
See, I've never been the type of someone says, hey, don't say this or don't. I'm like, no, I'm saying it because people need to know what's going on. And so it's funny that you bring that up because there is this culture of silence in city government where if you do speak up, you get blacklisted, or you get, especially like right now in the current administration, it's very cliquey. And if you're not a part of the Jason Lee, CPZ, Kennedy Bartley clique, you're on the outskirts. And I'll be the one to say, you don't have to be the one to say that, but there are a lot of people who have left the administration who've also, it's basically you are required to stay in line. And if you don't stay in line, then you're either pushed out or you're fired.
Yeah.
And so what do you think has been, so I've had Jeanette Taylor on the show, Alderman Hall have been on the show, Alderman Gardner have been on the show, and they've all spoken to what they think the issues have been in terms of like why the mayor has had such a low approval rating and why there's always been so much chaos on the fifth floor. What would you attribute to why they've had all these issues?
So it's just interesting, but let me start back. So, I worked for Mayor Daley back in the day in the late 90s and the early 2000s directly. But there was always people that the job was, and it was told, protect the mayor, protect the administration, protect really the mayor from his own people. And that always resonated with me because I thought everybody was on the same page, and I thought we were all headed with the same approach of how we were going to handle things. But what I learned from that was people left alone will come up with their own ideas and their own theories on how things should be done. So I think it's important for whoever's in charge, and not speaking of the mayor directly itself, but the chief of staff, the role that I had, to keep everybody lined up and in line and protect the administration and protect themselves from themselves, really. Especially these days where you don't have the type of long-term mentoring. People like myself would come up through government and was able to fall into different positions through time. I didn't become an executive director overnight. That was a process. It took many years. And quite frankly, it probably happened at the right time in my life where I was able to have that. But you learn a lot of things along the way. And then when you have the opportunity, you mentor and you teach other people that work for you.
So what do you attribute to your success though in you climbing up the ladder in city government? Because you started out as a laborer.
I was a laborer.
So to
Yeah.
go from a laborer to the executive director of OEMC and then all the way up to a mayor's chief of staff that's not a typical like process. That's very impressive to be able to go through that process because most people would just like either stay in that department or stay in that position.
So I always knew that I always felt I was going to work for the city and I'd get a good city job and then I'd get a better city job and then I'd retire and then you get the pension. But in that thought process, I never knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it took some time. Even as I talk to people today, it's not unusual for people to not figure out really what you want to do in life till when you're 30s or somewhere around that age. And I don't think people should feel like they need to know exactly what they want to do when they're 22 or 23 years old. For those that do, God bless them. I think that to know the path you want to take at that early age is a wonderful thing. I wasn't one of those. I didn't know where I wanted to land, but I did stand back and I did observe and I did feel that I had something that I could offer from watching others that I wanted to do. And I watched people like Tim Mitchell, for example, who he's no longer with us, he's passed on, but he was somebody who I had looked up to early on in my career. And I don't know if he exactly knew where he wanted to end up. So ultimately, he ended up being the Chicago Park District Superintendent. But him and I worked together very closely politically and in government throughout our years. And then he landed in the mayor's office, and then I went with him. So I got involved. I met the mayor, Mayor Daley at the time, and I knew the mayor. But he asked me, he goes, "What do you want to do? Because you're going to work for me. What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know, Mayor." I said, "I'll do anything." He goes, "How about traffic? You want to be in charge of traffic?"
I remember when you told this story. It's so funny. I swear, whenever I see traffic, I'm like, I need Rich here right now to fix this.
So that was the beginning that kind of gave me the mindset of ultimately finding out exactly what I wanted to do. He brings me into his office. He says, "What do you want to do?" I didn't have an idea. I was happy to be there. Probably had a silly look on my face. And then he said, "All right, you're going to be in charge of traffic." Walked out of his office, and I said, and Tim asked me, he said, "So what did he say?" He said, "Mayor said, I'm going to be in charge of traffic." He said, "Richie, what does that mean?" I don't know, but I'm going to be in charge of traffic. So the next day, the mayor called me about 7:30 in the morning, and there was a problem on Illinois and Lower Lakeshore Drive. And he goes, "Traffic's all backed up over here. What's going on? I'm be here for a little while. I got a meeting." He goes, "Let me know by lunchtime." Okay. I ran out of my house because I was still at home at 7:30, and I lived across the street from City Hall at the time.
Oh, wow.
But I had to go figure out what that problem was, and I navigated what it was. It was a utility company. It didn't have a permit, but that's the short story of a very difficult, probably 4 hours of my life that I sweated through trying to figure out what that was. But then I got into different aspects of traffic, because traffic can really get you into everything. It gets you into operations, get you into moving of hundreds of thousands of people, whether it's for a sporting event or everyday AM, PM traffic in Chicago, and transit traffic too. So it was really a good eye-opening for me into many other things that would build into my career.
I heard you tell that story at Soho when you did that panel discussion. And it was so funny because you were like, Mayor Daley would have you run down if he was going somewhere, if he's going to West Loop or whatever, you would have to run down there and make sure the traffic was clear before he would go down there so he wouldn't complain, right? That's what you were something along those lines?
I got into the habit of doing that.
Oh, okay,
so
got it.
I would like to know where the mayor's going, where's his schedule going, so if there's a problem along the way, I wanted to get in front of it first, or at least be able to tell him that I know that what he went through when he drove past it, and have a pretty good understanding. And he expected me to know, so it was really part of my job.
See, and I feel like that's the level of thinking that is absent in government nowadays. People don't think ahead like that, and I would love to see more of that coming up. So we do have the mayoral elections. Is there anyone specific that you're like, I think this would actually be a good mayor? Not specific, and this is not an endorsement, but just someone that you're like, this person has the political knowledge and the governing knowledge to be able to bring city council together, because I think it's more divided than it's ever been.
So it's a really good question. You laid it out very nicely, but I'll tell you this though. So city council right now is operating probably on a level that has never existed to the level that it's existing currently. You have 31 aldermen, maybe 31 plus at this point, that are operating on their own, and they are able to dictate government and do things, stop things, move things forward
Have you ever seen this before?
I've never seen it before, not to this extent, no.
Why do you think that's happening, though?
I think that I would say probably started during Lori Lightfoot's administration, where there was a lot of back and forth with city council on a variety of different issues. Now, mind you, there was a lot of challenging things during that administration as well. You had COVID, you had civil unrest, and you had the beginning of the migrant situation that started really under her administration. And I think there was a lot of questions and a lot of different ways on how things should be managed with the aldermanic body and Lori's administration. I think that carried into the current Brandon's administration as well. So I just think they snowballed into what they have become, where typically you'd have aldermen that may not have always been aligned together 15 years ago. Now they're tied at the hip together, and maybe they're going out having cocktails together at this point.
But why do you think that happened?
I think that the alderman body, you look back at different things that they have been pointed at for part of the blame on certain things that have transpired throughout different administrations going back 30 years. You can get into a variety of different subjects that they've been held accountable for. And I think they learned a bit of a lesson from that they are going to have to respond to certain things that not just the mayor will be having to respond to, that the sitting alderman is going to have to respond to. I voted on this for this reason, or I voted on that for this reason. Whereas, or maybe early on, 30 years ago, it was more just the mayor answering those types of questions.
Do you think that there's a way where Mayor Johnson is going to be able to fix this situation with the alders being on their own at this point?
At this point, I think it would take quite a bit of work to do something like that. I think they are unified, and I think it only gets stronger as the day goes on. And I think that certainly until the mayoral election, they're going to stay unified and solid, and we'll see what happens after February and April if that changes and starts to dilute.
So there's 10 people, I think, so far that have 10 people so far that have announced. Alexis Giannoulias is currently the front runner just based off of the amount of money and support from labor that he's going to be getting. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think that he makes it into the runoff?
If the election was today, I think he would definitely be in the runoff. But there's still quite a ways to go. There's a lot of candidates that are up there, and all of them, and I happen to know a good majority of them, if not all of them. I think that there are a lot of qualified people that are running the race in their own right. So it's going to be interesting, but I think that they're going to have to prove to the public not only why they want to be mayor, but that they can get us through a lot of these challenging situations that we're in. We're going to be staring at $1 billion deficit again.
Yeah, no, that is crazy, because they're saying now that the budget that the alders passed is actually not going to, there's going to be a huge budget deficit, that the alders passed a budget that is going to be unbalanced. Do you think that's true?
I think that was always something that was going to be challenged. This was the first time something like this has ever happened. I'm pretty confident in saying it's never happened before. So I think when you have a mayor gets elected, you have a cabinet and you have a staff and you have a budget director, you have a finance director and CFO and people that you rely on for balancing the city's budget, and also working with the state and businesses and taxes and what you're going to do looking into the future and how you're going to continue to move the city forward. Now, as we don't have a budget director. I know we had a CFO that left some time ago, and currently I believe we just hired someone new, or the city just hired someone new. But that's a lot of people absent in positions that you really need to be on top of finances and a whole other way. You rely on these people to do a job. That's what they're there for. That's what they're dependent on for, and that's their particular expertise. So it's going to be challenging once again.
There's, speaking of just budget deficits in general, one of the candidates is a current Cook County treasurer, Maria Pappas. What are your thoughts on her? Do you think she might be someone that could be helpful in helping fulfill that budget gap or budget deficit?
I think Maria is a very smart lady. I think she has thick skin, and I think she's certainly well suited to become mayor of a city like Chicago. If she desires to be the mayor, I don't think she's officially announced yet, but I think she's done a good job teeing it up. That's something that she may want to pursue. So she's got a lot of experience under her belt. She's smart, and I think she, again, has the thick skin to work with city government and our 50 aldermen and roll her sleeves up and get the job done for the city.
What did you enjoy more, being director of OEMC or chief of staff?
I think I really did enjoy. I felt that executive director at OEMC was the place that I was meant to be in my career, and I think I was really proud to have been make it to the top of that position, and I worked hard at it. And once I got there, I certainly didn't sit back and say, "All right, I've made it. Now I can just kind of coast." I don't think that. Actually, I didn't have the opportunity to do that anyways because I rolled right into COVID, and then civil unrest, and then the migrant situation. So there was no real time to do that. But one thing I'll tell you is that OEMC, the 911 floor, obviously you take 911 calls, you answer calls, and you dispatch the police and fire. I think that when OEMC first began in 1995, the way it was developed, it was still basically a call center. You take calls, you dispatch calls, and then you got into emergency management, and we got into technology, and then the 311 division had come into that building as well. So you had all these different functions that are taking place. Their primary function at the beginning, again, was called taking and dispatching. And I think when you, in traffic management, don't let me forget about traffic management, right? You start to, what could happen, you start to dilute one of the core functions because you're worried about bringing up these other functions that you're not responsible for. And I think there was some people at the top that were able to sit back and concentrate on those other dynamics, and call taking and dispatching, in my mind, was starting to get diluted as far as the oversight and supervision. So I thought it was important that I brought that back in, took a good look at it, developed some certain measures and put that in place so we can keep an eye on it, so we can stay on track of the anywhere between 8,000 and 15,000 calls a day that comes into emergency management, OEMC.
And that kind of helped set you up for dealing with an emergency situation like the migrant crisis. And I remember we had a couple conversations during that time. Do you feel like, or what do you feel like was the biggest issue in terms of the migrant crisis, why it got so out of control and why people were just so against having shelters or tents in their ward?
Working at OEMC and with emergency management, it gave me the access and the ability to work with all the other commissioners throughout my career. And I always respected all the other commissioners. I always respected what they did and how important that their role in their various departments was, whether it was transportation, street and sanitation, DFSS, human services. So I understood their operation, and I always felt it was my responsibility to know their operation almost as well as myself. And maybe that was selfish on my part, just because I was eager to just keep getting these different type of experiences. But the migrant situation in particular was probably one of the most challenging experiences that we went through in the city, as everybody knows by now. But our sheltering capacity at the time, I want to say, was 5,000 people in our city shelters. And we were at 99% capacity at the beginning of this migrant crisis that we were dealing with. So I knew we weren't going to be able to sustain anything for any long period of time before we have to really start looking at other resources beyond our sheltering system. That was only going to last for so long. And I think that certainly the city, and really no city, can be prepared to take on the amount of people that we ended up taking in from the border. Looking back, and some of the conversations going when it was happening was we should form a relationship with the federal government and figure out some sort of conversation that we can have with the states at the border to stop this, because at some point we are going to be in the position that we end up being in.
Why did those conversations never happen?
I think a lot of it was becoming political.
Yeah. If you look at, I said this from a long time ago, that Mayor Johnson should have went and spoke to Trump from the get-go. And that's what Mayor Mamdani did. Once Mayor Mamdani became mayor, he went and spoke to Trump. And I was like, and people were bashing him. And I'm like, no, that's the right thing to do. Go and stroke this man's ego so that he leaves New York City alone. Trump had made a comment where he said that the president or the CEO of Norfolk, the railroad company, they were the ones that were calling him, complaining about all the crime that was happening in Chicago. And that's why Trump kept saying he was going to send the National Guard into Chicago. And it was like, yo, if you guys go and just have a conversation with him. And like when all of the chaos was happening with ICE, it was like, Trump is the type, if you had a bunch of, because same thing was happening, I think it was in San Francisco or San Diego, somewhere in California, where the business community came together and they called Trump and they were like, hey, leave it alone because we don't have, we need, these are like our workers. It's going to impact our business structure here in California. It's going to affect the economy. And it almost felt like they didn't want to have those conversations so that it could be politically like, oh yeah, I'm going up against Trump. And it's, but you're harming people by doing that. And so that was like a conversation that I've had with multiple people where I'm like, yo, this is actually, just go fucking talk to him. Or like, I know it's not probably that simple, but Trump said many times that, hey, I welcome conversations. Again, I'm not a fan of Trump by any means, but I think that I agree with you. It was used politically. It felt like they were trying to gain some political points by attacking Trump, by allowing ICE to continue to stay in Chicago. Just based on the conversations that he had with Mamdani, where this is somebody that Trump was actively saying was a communist and a socialist and all this stuff. But he sat down and he said that Mamdani was a great guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, just go have those conversations. And they just chose not to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just like with COVID and now that this migrant situation has subsided, I think there should be some, the way I describe everything is an after action on this thing. And I think you have to look back at some of the decisions that you had made and be honest with yourself and say, should I have done this? Should we have done this? Should we have made some different changes in the way that we were approaching all of that?
Did you advocate to go speak to the federal government?
What I said, I laid out the facts. My job is really, I can get into, is operationally, how are we going to make it work? If we're not going to make this stop, how are we going to make it work? And it came to the point where we were at the brink on all fronts. There was no more outlets for this to sustain itself, and it was becoming extremely costly at the time. So once you run out of relatively healthy environments to put these migrants, where we're putting them is better than where they were at or where they were going to end up. But when you see the political conflicts that it was having early on, yeah, my job is to say, hey, let's start figuring out something with the federal government to come up with some sort of conversations that's going to put a finger on this thing until we can figure it out. Because politically, it's not working for us politically, or not working for you politically at this time, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on.
And there was pushback against that?
Again, I think it was more of the politics that existed. I'll just say that that prevented that from happening.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because these are people's lives people were playing around with.
And I certainly understand and appreciate. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan.
Yeah.
A lot of these people that were front and center with this problem within the respective areas of the city, wards, these are people that I had relationships with and people that I've known my entire career. And I understood what they were speaking about because they're concerned about their constituents. They're concerned about the people that live in their neighborhood and the people that expect them to do the best for them. And now taking on a whole different group of people, individuals, there was some very difficult times.
It was crazy times for sure.
To say the least.
I want to talk a little bit about, so your time as chief of staff, you helped spearhead bringing the DNC to Chicago, correct?
Yeah, I was part of that process, yes.
And you left before that, the DNC even took place. I think people were shocked about that because I think people expected you to at least stay through the DNC. I know like some of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. What are you comfortable with sharing in terms of why you left early?
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly comfortable talking about that. So and I think most people who know me know, I was planning on retiring a year before that. I made an announcement, I was going to retire. I did a couple of nice interviews with some individuals. We talked about my career up to that point and how much I enjoyed it. And I was comfortable retiring. And then when I got the phone call I was asked to stick around to become the chief of staff, I had made it clear
Who called you?
I had spoken to the mayor.
Oh, the mayor called you directly?
He had somebody from the campaign originally call me.
Okay.
I can't remember his or her name. I believe it was a female. And we had a few conversations for a couple weeks. And then I decided, all right, I think if an incoming mayor is asking me for help, I think I owe it to this guy to help him out and try to show him around and tell him what I know and advise him as best I can for that situation. So I said I'd stick around for 1 year, and I pretty much stuck around for 1 year to the date. I did have something lined up, so I had to put that on hold as well. So that was really no surprise, really, to probably anybody, maybe to some of the public, perhaps, but the people that I knew and people that I was speaking to leading up to that, they knew 1 year was my time frame.
Because your political ideology and Mayor Brandon Johnson's, just based on like the administrations that you've worked prior to, I don't know like specifically, but there was a lot of excitement, I think, from the business community, more so when they found out that you were going to be chief of staff, because it felt like there might be some like leveling of like political ideologies that were there. Do you feel like because you were not a part of the progressive movement, do you feel like there was apprehension from other staffers, like senior staffers, towards you?
Senior staffers within the mayor's administration?
Yeah.
I don't think there was any doubt where I stood with a lot of things. I am a conservative Chicago Democrat. I've always been. My father was. I was brought up that way, and the way that I understand Democrats is a little bit different from what's playing out now. I do believe that perhaps that may change back at some point, but I was always that person. I was public safety, first and foremost. I respected the Chicago Police Department. I'm pro-business, and I believe that the taxpayers need to get what they're paying their taxes for. And the best way of doing government was by providing public safety, and not only providing public safety, but giving people the perception that public safety, that they are protected and they are safe, whether it's riding the train, whether it's walking the streets, whether it's in their neighborhood. And I believe that police should be respected, and that we have to cultivate our business community because that's where our tax dollars come into. And that was always my mindset.
So in terms of public safety, Superintendent Snelling retired last month? Yeah, last month.
About 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. That was a major loss to the city. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that there will be a superintendent that's going to be voted in?
Yeah.
Before the
election?
The election, yeah.
Yeah, so Larry Snelling did a great job. I think that collectively, anybody you speak to would say that he did the best job he could possibly do. Currently, we have acting Fred Waller once again stepped up to the plate, and he'll fulfill that mission until the mayoral election. Perhaps it'd probably be something to consider to keep him there through that point. Now you have First Deputy Antoinette Ursetti. She's certainly well qualified. And
is that who you would want to see as superintendent? That's like what people are saying, is that she is most likely who should be considered to be superintendent.
Yeah, I think she certainly matured into the position of chief of detectives while she was there for a little over 2.5 years probably. And I think she proved that she can do that job well. I think she's going to prove that she can do the first deputy job well. And she was trained up to that position with Larry Snelling and now Fred Waller. So I think that she's now seen the way good policing and good, what's the word I'm looking for, good leadership is. And I think that she can certainly follow suit.
Is that who you would want to see as the next superintendent?
At this point, I think she'd be a great superintendent. I'd have to see some of the other people that are coming up, but I think Antoinette, if that's something that she chose she wanted to head in that direction for, I would wish her all the best, and I would offer her any help that I can give, and I know that she'll get it from a lot of others as well.
Because Lori Lightfoot did something different, right? She brought somebody in that was not from file and rank. Do you think that's an issue when... Does CPD, I guess in general, do they respect if someone is not from Chicago? Or do you think that CPD would want someone that's file and rank, just from your experiences?
I can answer that one with you 100% weight, I guess I'll say. So I think we're a city of 2.7 million people. We're a police department of once a little over 13,000 people. I think we have enough well-qualified people here in the city of Chicago to get the job done. I think it 100% has to be somebody here from the city of Chicago at that top spot. There's no question about it. I think the rank and file deserve that. I don't know who you can bring into our city and tell us how to police our people. And nobody knows our neighborhood better than our people. And I think that's been clearly shown based on when you try to bring an outsider in. It's having a difficult time as it is knowing the neighborhoods, the blocks. Our people know block by block where the problems are, where the problems aren't, where the families are that reside, that are just trying to get to work every day, that are getting on public transportation to try to go to work, to In a lot of cases, making minimum wage to do the best for their family back at home. And getting them to and from safely is what we're responsible for.
So so you're saying that it should be someone from Chicago. Do you think that, because CCPSA right now, they're currently saying that whoever is going to be picked to be the next superintendent it should be after the mayoral election. And that's what some of the alders are saying. That's what some community folks are saying, that we should wait until the mayoral election to appoint a new superintendent. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I think if someone's going to take on that role as superintendent, and you can't predict the future on what February and April is going to look like with the runoff, if someone's going to take that role, they could be short-termed at that position if there's a change in leadership at the top. So in that sense, to have a smoother transition without unbalancing what's currently existing, that I could see why people would say that.
Do you agree with that?
You know, it makes sense to me, yes, but that's not my call to make at this point. But I think I may advise whoever it would be asking, that's what I would suggest.
So I want to kind of switch topics a little bit, close off with a couple other things. So there was a Tribune article that just came out, Jason Lee interfering in contracts yet again. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, is it normal behavior for a senior advisor to insert himself into a contracted dispute?
I would say that the chief of staff's role is the person in charge, and that is the person who should be interacting with the commissioners, all 33 of the commissioners. That's what I would advise. Certainly, that's the way I would operate. I think a advisor on the fifth floor, should be working closely with the chief of staff. And if the chief of staff then chose to get involved with different situations, no matter what it may be, with any of the 33 commissioners, then that's the chief of staff's prerogative. But that's really the chief of staff's job.
So you think it's inappropriate for Jason Lee? Because, and again, you don't have to comment on this, but there's been rumors for a long time of people saying that Jason Lee's going to end up in prison because of all of the illegal, crazy stuff that he does. And so and people are using this as an additional example of, why has he not been fired yet? The inspector general has recommended that he gets fired, and he is still there. Why do you think that is the case?
I can't answer that question directly. I don't know. There's always been advisors on the fifth floor. There's always been people who have been there, and maybe they have some, political objectives that are involved, and it maybe gives them an inside view of city government, and maybe there's a relationship there with maybe perhaps the campaign office that, but it's always been an advisory type role. Again, it goes back to the chief of staff is the person who is the one who is there to interact with all 33 city agencies and the 5 sister agencies that we have. And it should remain, it really should remain that. Otherwise you take away the power of the chief of staff.
Because it seems more like Jason Lee operates as a chief of staff.
I know what I read in the papers right now. That's all I could say.
Moving forward, mayoral election that's coming up. I know we kind of briefly touched on it. What are the most important things that you believe whoever the next mayor should be, what should they be focused on specifically?
Yeah, first, I think they need to ask themselves, why do you want to become the mayor of the city of Chicago? We all know it's the greatest city in the United States of America. Being a proud, born and raised Chicagoan, it's a very challenging job. And I know this obviously from firsthand experience, but you're a city with a population of almost 3 million people, with really the responsibility for the whole region and really the whole state of Illinois. The majority of money that comes through city government in the state really funnels through Chicago. So that's something to be proud of. We have over 1 million people that utilize our transportation system. We are $1.3 billion in debt currently. You have an aldermanic body that exists that is very strong at this time, with 31 aldermen that are getting along very nicely at this time and voting the same way. So I think with all the candidates that we have out there, we have 10 or 12 at this point, and potentially more by the time it all gets started, I should say. But you have some really good qualified people out there. You have some new people that are involved, like John Kelly, who is throwing his hat in the ring. I think he certainly brings a different perspective to the race from maybe a business standpoint. I think I've heard him also talk about public safety a lot, so certainly he's got his eye on the ball with that. We got Alexi Janolius, who's at this point well-seasoned politician at this point in his young career. I think he certainly has a lot of potential, no doubt. And again, we spoke about Maria Pappas. I think she's certainly qualified.
What about Willie Wilson?
Hey,
Fourth time running.
Willie Wilson, let's put him out there. Willie Wilson, I think, has proven that he loves the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
I think he has put his money where his mouth is, and he's thrown a lot of money at our taxpayers throughout the city, and taxpayers people who really need his support. So I think we can't take him lightly by any means.
Yeah.
And maybe the fourth time's a charm, perhaps, who knows? Yeah. But he seems like an overall good guy. I did have the opportunity to meet him a couple times throughout my career, and I think he's a very nice guy.
What about Susana Mendoza? What are your thoughts on her?
Yeah, Susana Mendoza, I've certainly known her really throughout my career and her career, really pretty long time as well. I think her heart's in the right place. I think she's certainly another one who's qualified to certainly have the position. You have to see what they do, what these candidates do when they're standing at the podium and they're competing against each other, and how they react to whatever questions is being told to them, how they're able to not change their platform or who they are, but how they're adapting to where we're at, our current situation, and what they see, how they see the city progressing in the future.
What about Matt Brewer? What are your thoughts on him?
I don't know him well enough to talk about him in any depth. From what I've heard of him, I've heard he's a good guy. I heard he's a smart guy, but I really don't know enough about him to dig into any depth of who he is.
What do you look for specifically, though, in a mayor?
At this point, you're going to need leadership. You're going to need someone who's going to have strong leadership, somebody who is going to know how to work with our 50 aldermen, knowing how to navigate through what they have learned throughout the system over the last, I would say, 8 years now, where they've developed a skill set throughout the aldermanic body that they're able to do the type of work that they're doing now. And that's going to take some work and some patience and some relationship building. And I also think that the mayor of Chicago is going to have to have a relationship with the federal government that is going to have to exist well beyond any party lines, and really focus on, once again, what they're saying in all of our wards throughout the city, whether it's the northwest side, whether you're going up to 41, 38, 36, 19, all our wards. I shouldn't even single out any of them. They all have different perspectives. They all have different needs, but what they all need to be provided with is the basic. You need public safety, you need good transportation, and we need good schools in our city, and you have to have a good relationship with our business community.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. Last thing, any final thoughts? What are your plans moving forward? I know people are always interested to know, what's Rich Guidice up to? Anything that you're like, this is in the horizon, or this is something that I really want to get involved in? Yeah,
you're too kind to me. But like I said, I'm still trying to figure out my footing after city government. I'm getting into some consulting. I do work with Blue Star Produce Security, and very good company. I'm happy to be able to work there. Happy to do some of the consulting that I'm doing on the side, and I'm still looking forward to meeting a lot of interesting people. And if there's some government things that I can help with, and certainly some security things that I can help put together and package up, I think that's the avenue that I'm going towards. I would certainly help anybody who takes that top spot in city government, and certainly help and advise. I want to see our city progress. I'm not going anywhere. I still live in the city of Chicago, and I have no intent on living anywhere else.
Would you, depending on who becomes mayor, do you see yourself coming back out of retirement to go back to city government? I
would 100% help anybody who makes it to that top spot and thinks that there's some benefit by having me around at some capacity.
Oh, okay. So you will come out of retirement to go back to city government?
Yeah, I would come back to city government. I don't know if I would actually become a city employee again.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I do it for free to help anybody at that top spot, if they think that I can be helpful. But listen, I am, again, born and raised here. I love our people in the city of Chicago. I really believe that people can tell a difference from who's from here and who's not from here, which is why I said I think we have people we need to have people from our city in these top spots, because nobody knows our people better than people who are born and raised here.
Yeah. And there was always conversations and rumors for a long time about you running for mayor. Any thoughts of that in the future? Not necessarily this election cycle, but next election cycle?
It's something that I think I'd have to give a lot of thought to. I think the person inside me that always wants to take on something new and a new challenge. I think I would never say that it's something that I would not do. I do realize, though, that the challenges that exist, we just spoke to, you and I, that I think these candidates are going to have to look at and make sure that they're well aware of the challenges that it's going to take to push these things towards any finish line. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take time to work with the aldermanic body. It's going to take time to get the educational system lined up. It's going to take time to get our budget lined up, and it's going to be extremely challenging. And building relationships with the federal government isn't going to be an easy task as well. And again, public transportation needs to be looked at thoroughly and how it's going to work in our city. I think traffic in Chicago is tough. I'll go back to where we started in our conversation.
I'm telling you, I always think about you, and I'm like, where's Rich?
Yeah, we got perhaps bike lanes maybe where, and I know I'm going to upset certain people in the biking community, but I think that should really be looked at. You have arterial streets in the city that don't flow nearly as well as they used to, pushing people into bike lanes or to taking on bikes. I think that needs to be looked at. And again, I'm an advocate for bikes. I'm not opposed to that by any means. I just think let's take a step back and evaluate the locations where that's going to work best in the city for the people that need to get from wherever they're going from A to B. And if they're downtown as a destination because that's where they want to go, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I guess I landed on that a little bit because I do think that's something in our city infrastructure that should be looked at.
And any final parting words to the mayoral candidates that are running for office? Any advice to them?
I just wish them all the best of luck, and I know that they have the city's best interest at heart, and wish them all the best.
Cool. Thank you, Rich Guidice. Thank you guys for joining us. Tune in. Make sure you like and subscribe on all channels and follow us on all social media platforms or Victim or Villain Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.